Night flying looks incredible. City lights stretching to the horizon, smooth air and quiet radio. It can feel calm, almost serene. But move away from those lights into unlit countryside and the experience can change very quickly. So in this video, I want to properly break down night flying in the UK, what legally counts as night, what licence and medical you actually need, aircraft requirements, fuel reserve changes, and the operational realities that don't always get discussed. I'm Dale and this is Left Seat Culture, a channel about flying, gear, culture of aviation, and most of what I cover is general aviation, but hopefully it's of interest to all pilots, whatever you fly. So what counts as night here in the UK? In the UK, night isn't simply when it's dark. For practical purposes, night runs from 30 minutes after sunset to 30 minutes before sunrise. That's the rule most GA pilots use when checking legality. Technically, in the air navigation order, it's defined as the period between the end of evening civil twilight and the beginning of morning civil twilight. Most planning apps calculate this automatically, but it's worth understanding what actually triggers the legal change. In winter, that's a long window. In summer, especially further north, it can be surprisingly short. And importantly, it may not actually be fully dark when night legally begins. So I've done a video on the channel previously when I did my night rating a couple of years ago in terms of my experience, but I thought it'd be a good reminder to refresh people's memory as to what's actually required here in the UK to fly at night. So in terms of licenses, all licenses issued here in the UK start off as day only. To fly at night, you need to have a night rating issued to that. So whether that be a PPL, NPPL or LAPL. It's an often misconception that things like the NPPL means that it's for day only at all times. That's not the case. A night rating can be attributed to those licenses. So in terms of what training is required, a UK night rating requires a minimum of 5 hours flight time at night, 3 hours of dual instruction, 1 hour of dual cross country, where at least one leg must be 50 kilometers or more, and you must have 5 solo takeoffs and full stop landings. Once issued, your night rating doesn't expire, gets attached to the license, and obviously as long as you keep that current, your night rating will be current as well. Check my other video out in terms of how you maintain currency, especially when you want to carry passengers. An important note that people aren't always aware of, there are some medical requirements to be able to exercise that night privilege as well though. So you do need a class 2 medical, or you need an accepted colour vision assessment. A pilot medical declaration on its own does not allow night privileges, and that does catch some people out. It's obviously not just about the pilot, the aircraft must also be approved for night flight and properly equipped. That typically includes navigation lights, anti-collision light, landing light, instrument lighting and adequate electrical systems. Simply having lights fitted does not automatically mean the aircraft is approved for night operations. Aircraft approval matters just as much as the pilot qualification. So why did I get a night rating? For me, there was basically 3 main reasons. The first one being development. I see flying as a long time learning journey. The night rating was a structured way to improve both my aircraft handling, bit of instrument discipline, and obviously ongoing situational awareness. It pushes you slightly outside of your comfort zone, but obviously in a controlled environment. Reason number 2 was flexibility. In the UK, night can begin when it's not actually dark. So that 30 minutes after sunset might still be perfectly usable in terms of light conditions, and I didn't want to be in a position where I had to divert or rush a landing because the clock had ticked past what we consider to be legally night, even if that was by 10 minutes. And then third, obviously legality. If I'm operating in a regime that has a specific requirement for when night is, I want to be properly qualified for it, and it's pretty much as simple as that. I guess another thing to add, which is kind of the main reason for doing this video, it doesn't mean that I go looking to fly in darkness, and for me that's a very important distinction here. Being qualified to do something doesn't mean that you should choose to do it routinely. I'm quite comfortable operating in marginal light conditions that fall within what we have as the legal definition of night here in the UK, but I'm really not very interested at all in operating in deep darkness where the margins are really narrow. Over cities, night flying, again, it feels very manageable, but over unlit countryside, especially on a moonless night, it can be generally very difficult to see the surface or any cloud structure. And that's, for me, at least where the risk profile really changes. So if you're flying in truly dark conditions with no usable horizon and no surface lighting, then for me, that's when your reliance on instruments really increases significantly. And at that point, I think it's obvious for most people that an instrument rating becomes far more meaningful, not just legally, but practically. Because even though technically flying at night is VFR, your ability to visually confirm cloud separation or maintain a reliable external reference can be incredibly limiting, especially out in the countryside where it's completely black. And for me, that is a subtle but important distinction. Why for me, I'm not really comfortable flying VFR in the dark hours of night. So as crazy as it sounds, night flying in the UK is still conducted under VFR unless you hold an instrument rating and fly IFR. The visibility and cloud separation rules in Class G do not change simply because it's dark. Legally, the same minima apply with a few slight changes. Operationally, however, the environment can feel very different. You may not see clearly any terrain, you may not clearly see cloud layers, and you may be relying more heavily on instruments than you would during the day. So legally, VFR, but in practice, often much closer to instrument style flying. So in terms of what does change when flying at night you must not fly below 1,000 feet of the highest obstacle within 8 kilometers of your position. That's different from the typical daytime VFR in Class G, while the well-known 500-foot rule applies. Again, the reason is clear. At night, identifying terrain obstacles becomes much more difficult and forced landing options are reduced. The margins are narrower, so the regulations do reflect that. Fuel reserves also change day versus night. So under UK VFR rules for aeroplanes, day VFR final reserves need to be 30 minutes, but this increases to 45 minutes when night VFR flying. The additional 15 minutes exists for a reason. At night, diversion options are reduced, forced landing sites are harder to identify, and the workload becomes higher. Again, the margins matter more. So for me, when flying at night, there are some operational realities to consider. Over built-up areas, night flying can feel stable and visually rich. Clear horizon references, strong lighting cues, good spatial awareness, and it can feel easier than expected. But I don't know about you, the first time I flew over countryside, moving away from those lights, it can be very difficult. There's no visible horizon, no surface definition, large areas of complete darkness, and this really increases the risk of spatial disorientation. And on approach, the black hole illusion can distort your perception of height and glide path. Your depth perception reduces, peripheral cues disappear, and this is where that night flying discipline really matters. So for some closing thoughts, night flying here in the UK, it's perfectly legal, it's properly regulated, and it can be genuinely enjoyable. But for me, at least, it's much less forgiving than daylight flying. So just because something's legal doesn't mean it's comfortable. Just because you're qualified to do it doesn't mean you should be casually going flying in the depths of night, in my opinion. And just because you're capable doesn't mean you're obligated to fly in those situations as well. And I think understanding the differences is part of developing and becoming a more experienced pilot. So a question to you, have you flown VFR at night and what do you think of it? Is it complete madness, a complete enjoyment, or do you think it's best really to have an instrument rating if flying in the depths of night? I'd love to hear them down below. If you found this video useful, please consider liking it, subscribing, press the bell notification icon as well. That'd be very much appreciated. And if you want to join the discussion, there is a Left Seat Culture Discord group as well. Also consider following on TikTok and Instagram for other kind of real-time social media updates. Thank you very much for watching, and if I'm lucky, I'll see you in the next video. Take care and goodbye for now.